Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, I'd like to welcome all the new listeners to the show. I've noticed since I've come back from Santa Fe that we've had a spike in the number of listeners and Twitter activity, and I've had a number of messages from folks who said they have just found the podcast via Twitter. So, welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. And if you talk to some of the folks that have been here since the jump, you're going to want to strap on your seatbelt because we dive deep here on the Jeffrey Epstein Show. And what our format is we do at least 2 episodes a day. We do a morning update, and then we do the daily drop. And then I also do something called the Evolution of the Epstein Chronicles. And those are episodes where we take older articles and we break those down. And we look at some of the stuff that we might have missed before we started the podcast here in October. And we also do a segment called Closer Look. And a closer look is when we do a deep dive into somebody who is involved in the case, be it somebody that was named by Virginia Roberts or somebody that I feel is important that we need to discuss. That's what we use those segments for. And when we're reading these articles, the morning updates and the daily drops, I never read the article before I read it with you. That way, my reaction is visceral, right? I don't want to have some canned reaction. I don't want to have some sort of, written down script that I'm following. I don't do that. That's not my format here. I'm more of like a freestyle rapper almost, right? We just jump into these articles, we read them together, and I give you my opinion of what I think is going on in these articles in between the lines, and I give you the same reaction that you would get if you and I were sitting in my backyard hanging out. These are the same reactions that I have when I'm reading these articles alone, and I just happen to be able to, run my mouth and yap at you folks here on the podcast instead of keeping it all internalized. So for those of you who are just joining, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what the format here is on the Jeffrey Epstein Show. And for those of you who have been here, obviously, for a while, you already know what the deal is. So with that said, we're going to jump into today's article. And this article is from the New York Daily News. And the author is Stephen Rex Brown. Headline: Even Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, the last person to speak on the phone with him before suicide, shocked that he killed himself. Source: reading between the lines, she does not believe that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. That's exactly what that headline means. The last person to speak on the phone with Jeffrey Epstein had no idea the accused sex trafficker she'd loved deeply for years was about to kill himself. The Daily News has learned that she loved deeply for years was about to kill himself. The Daily News has learned. Wow. How could anyone, even his own mother, love Jeffrey Epstein? Especially after what we know about him, right? I mean, it's one thing that he was just a repugnant rich person who looked down his nose at people. That's repugnant enough. But then come to find out that he was involved in all of these horrendous and horrific crimes and still bring yourself to love him. It's such a weird situation. It's like these women or men who write letters to these convicted felons who are convicted of these like atrocious murders, mass murder, serial murderers, etc., and profess their love for them. What in the hell would motivate you to write a letter to somebody like, say, Richard Ramirez and say, oh, yeah, you know what? I think I'm in love with the Night Stalker. That's what I want in my life. I want Richard Ramirez in my bed every day when I wake up. That's the face I want to see for the rest of my life. What in the hell is wrong with people? The multimillionaire sex offender's final recorded phone call from MCC was with Karyna Shuliak the night before August 10th when the 66-year-old perv was found hanging in his cell, a source familiar with the matter said. Well, I wouldn't exactly even call it hanging, right? It was a soft hanging. It wasn't your traditional hanging, throw a noose over a beam, hang yourself. Right? That wasn't what occurred. It was off of the top bunk. We all know the situation. I'm not going to get into the weeds of that. But hanging, that's being a bit liberal with the term. When she hung up the phone, she was not under the impression Epstein was suicidal, the source said. We know he wasn't suicidal. We've heard that from several sources. Jeffrey Epstein thought he was going to win on an appeal. He thought that he'd be able to appeal this, and he thought that his friends would come in and they'd inject themselves into this case once again and get him off. Do not doubt me on this, folks. That's exactly what Jeffrey Epstein was thinking. It's so hard for me to believe that he killed himself. It is so hard for me to believe that. The evidence just does not point to that. That description echoes one by Epstein's attorney, Reed Weingarten, who said during a hearing in Manhattan federal court that his legal team did not see a despairing, despondent, suicidal person prior to the shocking alleged suicide. Look, people like Epstein aren't the type of people to kill themselves. He truly believed that he was going to get off, folks. He didn't think he was going to end up doing real time. He thought that his money, his power, his access was going to inevitably lead to him kicking these charges and heading right back out to get involved in his disgusting operation once again. It happened once. It happened during the whole entire Bear Stearns thing. It happened with Hoffenberg. Why would Epstein think that his luck is going to change this time around? And the only reason the only reason it changed was because Epstein's handlers abandoned him. That's point blank period. His handlers and intelligence abandoned him and left him to his fate the second time around, it looks like, or were going to do that, and who knows what happened after that. I don't know what happened in that jail cell. I'm not going to sit here and act like I have some sort of information nobody else has. I just have an opinion like everybody else. And my opinion is that Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself. Nonetheless, a prosecutor from the Southern District of New York sought to review a recording of the final conversation with Shuliak, seeking any hidden meanings that could only be understood by the duo that had been together for 4 or 5 years, sources said. I don't even buy this whole thing. He was with Shuliak as his girlfriend. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't the type. All right? Eva Anderson and Ghislaine Maxwell were about the extent of it for Epstein's quote-unquote girlfriends. This might have been a companion, woman, but they're acting like, he was about to marry her, and we know that that wasn't the case. We know that Epstein's real goal was to run a breeding facility from New Mexico. We know that his real goal, what he really wanted to do, was to marry Glenn Dubin and Eva Dubin's daughter. That's what he wanted. So I don't really think that, now Shuliak, this Shuliak woman, she might have been in love with Epstein, but a person like that, I'm sure he wasn't reciprocating that love. Shuliak declined due to concerns about her own possible legal exposure amid ongoing federal investigations into Epstein's shadowy world, according to a source. There you go. Again, how these people that were involved with Epstein, like this Shuliak lady, how is she not being brought in to have a talk with the FBI? It's like during the Las Vegas shooting. I don't mean to jump off topic here just for 1 second, and then we'll go right back to what we're talking about. Like the October 1st Las Vegas shooting. His Stephen Paddock's wife, Mary Lou Danley, was, front and center in the case, and then all of a sudden, she's gone. She has nothing to do with it. She didn't know what he was up to, etc., etc. I don't buy any of that stuff, right? I don't buy any of that stuff. To tell me that somebody's significant other doesn't know what they're up to, doesn't at least have an idea what they're up to, is just pure BS. Even mafioso wives know what their husbands are up to. They might not know all of the details, but they know that their husband is not going down to the garment district to sell suits. Okay? 3 sources did not consider Shuliak a victim of Epstein. Rather, the woman in her 30s presented herself as Epstein's girlfriend and believed he sincerely loved her. The source familiar with Shuliak said, well, New York Mets fans truly believe that the New York Mets are going to win the World Series every year, and how does that work out? The fact is, a man like Jeffrey Epstein loves money, loves power, and loves abuse. That is about as far as it goes with the L word, with Mr. Scumbag Epstein. She was never exposed to any sex trafficking by Epstein, who was a master at compartmentalizing his life, the source said. That you see, look, what the source is giving his friends an out here by saying Epstein was a master at compartmentalizing his life. So going forward, this quote can be used in other articles. Well, remember in the Daily News article, the source says Epstein was good at compartmentalizing his life. That's why we didn't know what was going on, man. It was even written in the Daily News. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Nobody is that good at compartmentalizing their life. All right? Especially considering all the weird shit at this guy's house. Real compartmentalizing, huh? You got a picture of Bill Clinton in a dress on your wall. You got pictures of girls naked everywhere. You have dildo-shaped soap bars. Yeah, you're just an average guy. Just an average Joe. Shuliak was with Epstein in Paris before he returned to the U.S. and was arrested at Teterboro Airport in July, according to the source. She learned of his quote-unquote suicide while in Belarus and has been devastated since. Records show that Shuliak married an alleged Epstein victim who was a U.S. citizen in 2003. Their divorce was finalized in July 2019, weeks after Epstein was arrested. A lawsuit filed by a different Epstein victim against his $577 million estate, $636 million now, alleges that the perv forced her into a sham marriage to keep a victim who wasn't a U.S. citizen in the country. Sources said Shuliak's marriage, which is not the subject of any lawsuits, followed a similar pattern. I don't even know what to say about all of this. We know that there's some lawsuits going through the system right now, so I'm not even going to speculate on who the victim is, the person who was forced into the marriage. I'm not going to speculate on any of that. I don't do that here. And even, for those of you who have been listening from the beginning, I never even mentioned any of the girls' names until, they themselves went on record. I just referred to them as Jane Doe, etc., etc. Jeffrey Epstein's international sex trafficking ring harmed an incomprehensible number of girls, and these sham same-sex marriages served as a basic and important purpose for Epstein's trafficking operation because they enabled Epstein to get citizenship for girls that he wanted to keep in this country without facing a high level of scrutiny in the citizenship process, said an attorney representing Epstein victims, Sigrid McCauley, who spoke generally about the alleged sham marriages. Yeah, that's a problem. There's definitely a problem with that, and not only with Jeffrey Epstein. We see that a lot. We see these kind of marriages taking place in the Western world. But it's just another layer of his trafficking ring. That Epstein, he exerted so much power over those around him and those in his orbit that he could even make them marry people. And do so without, making any waves about it or going to the authorities about it or anything like that. And a lot of that has to do with the precedent that has been set by the authorities for not caring about this case in general. Why would anyone come forward after they've seen the way that Maria Farmer was treated? Or they see the way that the young ladies were treated in the Palm Beach case first time around? Or they see the way Virginia Roberts has been treated, et cetera, et cetera. Why would anyone want to come forward? A timeline of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking case. Shuliak also faced possible legal risks tied to her dental practice registered at Virgin Islands address where one does not appear to have existed. Epstein used the same address for a charitable foundation, a company that owned Epstein's jet, and a shady international bank, among other corporate entities. Now, the dentist angle is interesting to me. If you're a dentist, then you have access to scheduled narcotics, right? You can get Lortabs, pain pills, etc., etc. And we know at these parties of Epstein's that they liked party favors, right? I know, and we know from sources that they got down that way. So could she have been a front to get these drugs for these parties? I don't have any evidence of that, not at all, but it's just, I think about these things. I try and think out of the box about these things in this case because nothing is what it seems. So we're forced to really think outside of the box and be on our toes a lot here and adjust to the information that comes out. So that's something I'm definitely going to follow up. I'm going to keep following. There was a lot of rumors about there being a lot of drugs involved at these parties, and we've seen it with other perverts as well, with Nygaard, et cetera, et cetera. These people love to use drugs and alcohol to ply their victims to make them more manageable. Shuliak's refusal to speak to the feds, even though the source said she does not believe she's an FBI target, highlights the risks facing anyone associated with the registered sex offender who rubbed elbows with the rich and the famous. Yeah, well, if you were in his orbit and you have any information at all, you need to come forward voluntarily. If you do not do that, then you're considered a target. You're considered somebody that's going to end up with a closer look here on the podcast. Her last conversation with Epstein is of interest to at least one attorney, Brad Edwards, who argued in a legal filing Thursday that the sex offender killed himself to avoid hefty payouts to victims. Anyone that he spoke to during that month he was in custody is going to be relevant to why he committed suicide, Edwards said. I want to talk to anyone he had communication with during that time. And I respect Brad Edwards. He's a really good lawyer, and he's doing good work in this case. And I totally see the angle he's going with here. But I just don't believe that Epstein killed himself. I honestly don't believe the evidence points that way. And from everything we've seen, and from the absolute, complete, and utter tank job done by the Department of Corrections and the Justice Department in handling the evidence, how can one not have questions about what occurred in that jail? How can one not question what happened to Jeffrey Epstein when he was in custody? How can one just follow the narrative and be confident in what the government is telling us? Shuliak's attorney, Maurice Surcars, declined to comment. Sources told the Daily News there are multiple threads of the ongoing Epstein investigation. I can confirm that. I've spoken to a law enforcement source who has told me the same exact thing. This case is moving forward. The co-conspirators are being investigated, but besides that, they had no information on when there'll be arrests or anything like that. So all I can say is that I can confirm that the investigation is ongoing for whatever that's worth. One is focused on Epstein's alleged madam, co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell, longtime assistant Leslie Groff, and anyone who booked Epstein's perverted massages. Another is examining whether any of Epstein's friends who received massages knew the masseuses were underage. An effort is also underway to solve the mystery of how Epstein made his money. Guess what? Who cares if you know that they're underage? So you're telling me a regular guy who gets caught up with, in the same situation is going to be given that sort of latitude? I don't care if you knew they were underage. I don't care if Alan Dershowitz knew they were underage or not. Why is he over at Jeffrey Epstein's house in his gross-ass, skid-marked tighty-whities getting a massage? That's not what normal people do. We don't go to our friends' houses, show up in our little robe, take it off, hop on the massage table, and catch a massage together while the ball game's going on in the background. That's not what normal people do. And furthermore, if it was the sort of thing that we would do, it would be with professionals. Not with little girls pulled off of the street. We're talking about some of the richest, most elite people in the world. They can afford to go to any massage therapy center in the whole entire world, or have those same people come to them. And instead, they chose to be touched by little girls so that they could live out their sick, disgusting desires. That's what it comes down to. A source close to Shuliak said she hadn't been contacted by federal authorities since the aftermath of the shocking suicide and did not believe she was a target of any ongoing investigations. They're not going to only arrest low-level people. That would look terrible, Edwards said. Yeah, it certainly would. And so far, though, let's be honest. Let's be honest in our accounting here. The only two people that have been arrested are the two prison guards. The two low-hanging fruit prison guards. Right? Oh, yeah, it's their fault. Let's pin it on them. They fell asleep. Meanwhile, we know it's so much deeper than that. Anyone paying attention knows it's so much deeper than that. And I hope that the jury takes it easy on them at this point, just to put their finger in the eye of the Justice Department. Because the Justice Department is completely unhinged, the Justice Department is completely out of control, and the Justice Department has zero oversight. They are able to do whatever they want. That has become very apparent in the last 4 years. We have a division, a shadowy part of the government who are operating within the shadows without any oversight. And they're able to do whatever they want, whenever they want, with zero repercussions ever. I'm tired of it. And I know everybody listening to this podcast is also tired of it. Enough is enough. This year, 2020, folks, it's the year. This is the year the predator turns into the prey. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. If you enjoy my content and you like the podcast and you would like to help support us, you can do that by clicking on the GoFundMe link inside of the description box. We are about $1,400 away from our goal. And to everybody who has donated so far, thank you so much. You people are the reason that we were able to, go to Santa Fe and make it so seamless and make everything crack off. And I'm very, very, very grateful for all of your support financially and just for support of the show in general. Just sharing the show and talking about it with your friends and, putting it on social media, that's worth its weight in gold to me, folks. So thank you so much for your support. I appreciate all of you, every last one of you. And I will most certainly be back later on tonight with the Daily Drop. Enjoy your Tuesday, everyone.